Now, do I need to hit a button that says present to everyone?
Yeah.
Oh, so I should hit this button that says present to everyone, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, life.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. I'm Amy Eisenstein, and today I am going to show you how to raise major gifts. Even if you're terrified that you don't have time, donors, or know how to get a meeting. So thank you for joining me. I'm guessing this is probably not your first webinar. The first thing I want to mention is that if you've tried to raise major gifts in the past and felt like a failure, it is not your fault. There's a lot of information out there, and I know it can be overwhelming and confusing. If you've been concerned in the past that you couldn't succeed raising major gifts, I want you to put those fears to rest. You can do this. You just need the right person to show you how to do it. So that is what we're here for today. And for some reason, hold on one second, let me make sure I can advance the slides. All right, good, I can. Okay, so you're in the right place. Good news, that's what we're here for today. I know you have a dream to change the world and make an impact. I want to show you how to make that happen during this webinar. So listen, my goal for this webinar is to help two types of people. For those who are beginners at fundraising or raising major gifts, I want to show you exactly how to get out of the vicious cycle of grant writing and event planning, which is probably keeping you chained to your desk and preventing you from getting out and meeting with your best donors. I'm also going to show you that you don't need any new donors to get started raising major gifts. And the more experienced folks, I'm thrilled you're here. I want to provide you with some insight into the mind of your donors. I want to help you overcome objections that you might, so that you get more meetings with donors. And I'm also going to show you that you do have time to focus on raising major gifts. Sound good? All right, so at any time throughout this webinar, I want you to feel free to type in, I'm here, I agree, yes, amen, anything you wish to let me know that you're here and you're with me, okay? All right, so listen, my goal for everyone is to show you that the only way to exponentially raise major gifts is with a mentor, an experienced mentor, and that mastering major gifts provides you with an experienced mentor who will show you the way step by step. And that's what we're going to do today. So from before I was in high school, I knew I wanted to help people. In college, instead of joining a sorority, I lived in the community service house. So I didn't join a sorority, I lived in the community service house. I went to graduate school, I got a degree in nonprofit management, and working in the nonprofit sector is my calling. I am guessing it's yours too. I attended graduate school at night while I worked at my first fundraising job at a battered women's shelter. And of course, I was the only development staff member there. As you can probably imagine, or maybe even relate, I was responsible for everything, including grant writing, event planning, direct mail, marketing, database management, making the coffee, taking out the trash. You know what I mean. I really wanted to raise major gifts to help the women and children we were serving, but I was terrified to ask for money in person. I really had no idea how to go about it, not to mention the fact that I had no time to figure it out with all of my other responsibilities. And although I have a master's degree in nonprofit management, they only offered 2 fundraising classes in graduate school. You can probably guess what they were. One was on grant writing, the other was on event planning. Yeah, so I was ready to save the world, but I had no idea how to raise funds outside of grant writing and event planning. So after working at the battered women's shelter for several years, I really wanted to learn how to raise major gifts. but I didn't have a mentor or anyone to learn from at the shelter. So I took a job at a big university. So when I arrived on campus, I found that I was at a unit where no one knew any more than I did. So I was expected to meet with alumni, but I really didn't know how to get a meeting or what I would even say to them if I got a meeting. And every time I went to pick up the phone, I got a knot in my stomach and my palms would sweat. I put down the phone and I found something else to do. Well, fortunately, a few weeks later, I was assigned a mentor from another part of the university, someone who taught me the ropes, and I could ask as many questions as I want. And that's when I really started to raise major gifts and learn how to raise major gifts. So after several years at the university, we finished a big, successful capital campaign, and I felt called back to a small shop. So I took a job again where I was the only fundraiser on staff. Now, because of my time at the university, I thought I had a handle on raising major gifts. But now, of course, I was working back at a small shop again, and working at a university and working in a small shop and raising major gifts, they're not the same thing. As you probably know, in a small shop, everything seems like an emergency. And you're always putting out fires and getting called into meetings and pulled in 100 directions. Sound familiar? Yeah. So it was not long after I arrived at my new organization that I had an epiphany. And the epiphany was that it's just as easy to raise 25,000 as it is to raise 5,000. And that's what I should be focused on. So one day I was scheduled to meet with a friend of one of my board members, John, and we were going to ask for a gift. Now, John, the board member, wanted to ask his friend for $5,000. But I had reason to believe that this friend could give significantly more. So I took a huge risk and I asked John to let me do the asking. And I mean, I told him what my plan was, of course, and he didn't want to, but he reluctantly agreed. And I went ahead and asked for 25,000, which we got. But if I hadn't had that mentor and experience at the university, my mentor showed me how this is done, I would never have had the confidence to go for it. And if we had done what John had wanted, we would have asked for 5,000 instead of 25,000. It really took me almost 10 years to have this epiphany. And while and I had to build up the confidence, right, necessary to do that. But it was really thanks to my mentor showing me the way. But I don't want it to take you 10 years to learn this lesson. So that is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Now, I understand you may never work at a university, but that is not a reason that you can't have an experienced mentor to show you the way to raise major gifts. And I created Mastering Major Gifts so I could mentor people just like you. So let's go ahead and get started. Here's what we're going to cover in the next 30, 40 minutes or so. First, how to raise major gifts without adding a single new donor to your list. Secret number 2, how to get donors to say yes to meeting with you. Secret number 3, how to find time so you can raise 10 times more than you are raising now. Are you ready? All right, let's get started. All right, secret number 1, how to raise major gifts without adding a single new donor to your list. Now, frequently I get calls from development directors asking me to help them find new donors. And the problem is that they are overlooking the best donors for their organization. So we're going to talk about the ABCs of prospect identification or prospective donor identification. So when you're trying to identify prospective donors, I want you to think about the acronym ABC. A is for access. Do you have access to the person? Can you contact them? Will they answer the phone? Can you mail to them? Can you email them? B is belief. Do they believe in the cause? And C is capacity. Do they have the capacity to make a major gift, or whatever a major gift is at your organization? So it might be $1,000, it might be $10,000, it might be $100,000, but really keep that in mind. For a lot of your organizations, $1,000 or $5,000 or even maybe $10,000 is a major gift. So capacity is sort of relative. They only need to have capacity to make a major gift. They don't have to be a millionaire or a billionaire. I'm sorry, they only need to have capacity to make a major gift at your organization. And so we really want to think about, do we have access to these people? Do they believe in the cause? And do they have capacity to make a major gift? And that's what makes a great prospective donor for your major gift program. And so when you start with your current donors, you're already 2/3 of the way there. Because with existing donors, you already have access to them because they've given you their address, their email, whatever, their contact information when they mailed in their gift or sent in their gift, and they believe in the cause. You have A and B covered. And you know they believe in the cause at least a little bit because they've made that initial gift. And so this is really important. You're 2/3 of the way there. Now, your only task with these folks is to find out if your current donors have C, or capacity. If you start with brand new donors, you have to start from the beginning. You're going to have to gain access to them, get them to believe in the mission or the organization, and determine their capacity. So why would you go through all of that when you already have hot prospects for major gifts in people who already support your organization? Is this making sense? So listen, many donors, they have the capacity to make gifts 10 times more than they're making through the mail or online right now. I want you to really think about that. Donors have the capacity. Many donors, not all donors, many donors have the capacity to make gifts 10 times more than they are currently making through the mail or online. So that means that your $100 donors likely have the capacity to give $1,000. And likewise, your $1,000 donors may have the capacity to make gifts of $10,000 or more. Isn't that cool? Now, let me use myself as an example. I give many organizations $100 every year. If any of them came to me and sat me down and made a strong case for support, I could fairly easily give them $1,000. In other words, 10 times more than what I'm giving them now. You don't know why people are giving you what they are giving you. Maybe you've never asked for more, right? Maybe you've only asked online or through the mail. And so they have no reason or incentive to give more. Now, some of you may not think it's true of your donors that they have the capacity to give 10 times more than they are giving now, but I will tell you that at every single organization I've ever worked at, we've found donors hidden among their current donors who were able to give 10 times or more than they had been. So if you're thinking, that's not my organization, not in my database, my bet is the statistics tell me that it's simply not true. There are people hidden in your database who could give 10 times more. So let me tell you about Amanda Manley. She works at Safe Harbor, and she says, I'm fortunate to have a large donor database, but sifting through it was a nightmare. I utilized the methodology from Mastering Major Gifts to analyze my donors based on access, belief, and capacity. And I discovered that we have a veritable gold mine of potential donors. And like Amanda, you may not even know who's in your database. This is the case for most people that I work with. So the reality is that I've never worked with an organization that wasn't surprised by the fact that there was significantly more money in their database than they had thought. I've had executive directors, development directors tell me that there aren't people among their donors who could make bigger gifts, but experience and data tell us that's simply not true. So I hope that's inspiring. Maybe you're familiar with the Pareto principle, are you? It's better known as the 80-20 rule. You may know it as that. And it predicts or says that 20% of your donors will give 80% of your dollars. And it's actually closer to 90-10, which means that the top 10% of your donors, in other words, your major donors, they may give 90% of your dollars raised. Now, if you're thinking that can't be true, or we only have a few donors, the good news is the reality is you only need a handful of qualified donors. Major gift fundraising is not about the masses. It's about a select few who can really, really make a difference. So now you know that the best major gift donors are already hiding in your database. You don't need new donors to raise major gifts. Is that making sense? All right, let's move on to secret number 2. Secret number 2 is how to get donors to say yes to meeting with you. And that is a critical piece of being able to raise major gifts, and that is getting out and meeting with donors. So if donors are not willing to meet with you, or you're not making the time, for whatever reason you're not meeting with donors, you have to get donors to say yes, and you have to get out and meet with them. So let me tell you a quick story. When I first started out in fundraising, I knew I needed to meet donors. I thought it was my job to meet with donors and really tell them everything I knew about this domestic violence shelter I worked for. I shared facts, I shared figures, I told them stories. And regardless of how devoted to the battered women's shelter they were, they got bored with my ramblings. I have to admit, usually sooner than later. And it has taken me years to understand something that you may already know. So the thing you may already know is that the number one thing that people like to talk about is themselves. Of course, the number one thing that people like to talk about is themselves. So here's the problem. That goes for you and me too. It goes for all of us. So that explains why I was busy talking about the shelter. I didn't pause to let the donors get a word in edgewise. It was all about what I needed, what my agenda was. So fortunately, I had my mentor, and she taught me to focus on the donor, really not on the university. And that may sound strange at first. What do you mean, don't focus on the organization, don't focus on the university? But when I was working at the university, I couldn't possibly tell donors everything that was happening at the university because it was so big. There were so many programs and campuses. So it forced me to ask them about their experience and focus only on the pieces of the story which would interest them the most. So I would ask them about their experiences or what they were interested, and then tell them a little bit about the university. So that really helped me have sort of a light bulb moment, my aha moment. It's about how the donor relates to your cause, right? It's not simply about the organization. When I was telling donors everything about the battered women's shelter, it was what I wanted them to know about the organization. But I really wasn't including them in the process. I wasn't interested enough in learning why they were interested or why they were committed. And it was my fatal flaw, and it might be yours too. So it wasn't until I really started to listen to my donors and care about why they wanted to be involved that I started to have success. Does that make sense? So I want you to think about focusing on the donor, not your organization. Identify how the donor relates to your organization and then focus with them on that. So a while back, I was coaching a woman. Her name was Jody, and we were talking about one particular donor, one of her organization's bigger donors, and she was frustrated because he kept blowing her off and wasn't scheduling a meeting. And she was relatively new to the organization, so she didn't know him that well, but she really she had quotas to meet. She had goals. And so she knew he was one of the bigger donors to the organization. And she was frustrated that he wasn't saying yes to a meeting. And I started asking her questions about what was going on and why she thought it might not be going well. And it came out that his wife was in hospice at this time. And I couldn't believe that she was so focused on her needs and her goals that she didn't see this as a complete and total conflict of interest with the donor, right? And I know that this is a really extreme example and almost to the point of ridiculous, like that you would sort of keep calling and harass a donor while they're going through a personal life crisis. But I'm actually afraid that it's not as unusual as it might seem. And so I know, like I said, I know it's a really extreme example, but I want you to think about what's going on with your donors. Once I figured out that she was so frustrated she couldn't get the meeting, and I said, listen, why don't you show him some tender, loving care at this time of need in his life? Offer to do something for him, run an errand, bring dinner, something, at least send a card or flowers. And stop asking for a meeting. That is probably the fastest way to drive your donors away. Be aware of what's going on in their lives. Focus on them, because then once you come through some of these life challenges and life tragedies, you might, really embrace the people that were there for you when you go through these hard times. But focusing on them, how can the organization relate to them? Okay. So another story quickly. Recently, I received a call from Rachel, and she worked at a small college and was having a hard time getting meetings with alumni for herself and the dean. And this isn't unusual. I get calls like this all the time. I asked her to tell me exactly what she was saying to people when trying to get a meeting. And once she told me, it was immediately obvious what the problem was. Rachel was focused on her goals and not on the alum. Rachel had been asking alumni if she could schedule a time for the dean to come meet with them so that the dean could give them an update about what was happening on campus. Okay, cardinal sin number one, right? It's all about the organization. That's so boring. The alums could get that from reading the newsletter or the website. They don't need to take time out of their busy lives for the dean to come tell them what's going on campus. So I explained to Rachel that she needed to shift her focus to the alum, and she changed her script. So instead of asking alumni to meet to learn what to meet so that the people from the college could educate the alumni about what was happening on campus, she asked them to meet so that they could share their experience as a student and as an alum with the dean. And once she switched her focus, she was easily able to secure donor meetings, because essentially what she was doing was asking them to talk about the number one thing that people like to talk about, which is themselves. Like, let us come, let you talk about yourself, your experience on campus as a student, your experience as an alumni, and people love to talk about themselves, so they will say yes. Now, I know you could use the same methods to engage your largest donors and secure meetings with them. You can ask them, why they're involved in the organization, why they care about the cause. Am I right? You can do this, right? Okay. So I want to introduce you to Kelly. Kelly took Mastering Major Gifts. She says, before this course, I would reach out to schedule a visit and would get no response. I implemented Amy's tips and was able to secure 4 donor visits right away. So you don't have to take my word that this works. I hope you'll take Kelly's word. It really did work for her, and I'm so excited for her. And so you might be thinking, well, I do focus on them, right? Or maybe what if I focus on them and they still say no? So that happens for sure. Several years ago, I was preparing to call a donor, and I was worried that she would say no to meeting with me. So I sat down and I prepared a list of all the possible objections she had or she could have, right? Before I called. I wrote down all the possible objections. You know, she might say, I don't want to meet, I don't have time, I already gave, or I'm not that interested in the cause, right? Donors say these things to us all the time. And I have to tell you, I've never called someone who was excited about meeting. Everybody objects. I mean, if you ever called somebody who was like, oh my gosh, I've been waiting for your call. I'm so excited. I can't believe it. Thank you for calling me. Yes, of course I want to meet. No, you're going to hear one of these objections. Can we do this on the phone? Or I already gave. I don't really have time. I don't want to meet. Why me? There's hundreds of these objections. So being prepared with a specific response to any objection that they could have has really helped me secure meetings that I would not have gotten if I had not been prepared. Because you want to think about, what are you going to say to push back? If you hang up the phone every time a donor offers one of these objections, you will never get a meeting. You will need to push back a little bit and have responses for why you'd like to meet, even though they don't want to, or don't have time, or they already gave, or they're not that interested. So you can make you know, it really is this simple. And I want you to make a list of objections and then all of the responses that you will give. Listen, sometimes it is hard to believe, but people really do want to meet. They want to donate. They want to be part of the solution. If you focus on them and how they can help, then they are willing, even eager to meet. Okay, so let me tell you one other story. When I asked for my first major gift, I was elated when the donor said yes. To my surprise, she seemed as delighted as I was. And I have to tell you, I couldn't figure it out. I had just taken her money and she was thrilled. I was completely bewildered. Over the years, I have learned that it really does feel good to give. So listen, when you ask for major gifts in the right way, donors feel great about the good that they're able to do in the world, because they may not be able to volunteer as much as they would like or work for the cause full time, but they can contribute and help in that way. So once you start to focus on them, it's much more likely that people will want to meet with you. You know, if you ask in the right way, people should be thrilled. They should be thanking you. They should have a great experience. It shouldn't be negative or awful or arm twisting or horrible. So I also want to tell you that not everyone will want to meet with you, and that is actually okay. But if you use these strategies, it will enable you to secure more meetings with people who do want to give. And that's the key. You want to meet with people who do want to give. It's okay when people say no. They probably won't give anyways. Okay, are you ready to keep going? Let's move on to secret number 3. How to find time so you can raise 10 times more than you are raising right now. Who wants to raise 10 times more than you are raising right now? All right, that's what we're going to talk about. Listen, grant writing takes time. Event planning takes time. All fundraising takes time. And it is just a matter of how you are choosing to spend your time. Let me ask you a question. Think about it. What if your top 10 donors each gave more? Your top 10 donors each gave more, a little bit more. Would it be enough for you to give up one of your events or skip writing a grant or two? Add it up in your mind. Really think about it. Just 10 donors, each giving a little bit more. A little for them, maybe a lot. A few years back, my mother-in-law was diagnosed with cancer. Now, we had a 2-year-old at the time, and we both had full-time jobs. We barely had time to make dinner or wash the dishes. However, when she got sick, my husband and I dropped everything, obviously, but only the day before, those things had seemed so important. And we spent hours and then days and then weeks, and ultimately we spent months sitting in hospital rooms. And if you had asked us, we would have told you that we didn't have the time, but we found it, we made it. And I have to tell you, I don't want to compare a sick relative to major gifts, but I'm going to anyways. When things are a priority, you make the time. When you're talking about the biggest gifts with the potential to transform your organization, everything else can wait. Everything else can wait. And when you do go through something like a sick relative, time stops. Time stops. But the things that you don't get to, they just aren't important anymore. And that is the case when raising major gifts, because when you start to raise major gifts, then those other things that seem like a priority now, they just get put on hold. Somebody else does them. They magically disappear, even in a small shop. So listen, I understand where you're coming from. I've been there. I have worked in small development shops, and my hair was on fire, always. But once I realized that 2 or 3 gifts from individuals could replace the income from several of my grants, I stopped writing them. When I realized that 2 or 3 gifts from individuals could replace some of my smaller events, I stopped doing them. Now, listen, caution. I want to say caution, absolutely caution, caution, caution. Once you don't write a grant or don't plan an event that you need the money from, you need to raise money from individuals. But the time can be found. I want you to treat your major gift time like you would if a family member was in the hospital. I want you to drop everything else and do it. Okay, maybe not everything else, but I do want you to do it. Your organization and your career depend on it. Now, you may be thinking, okay, you don't know what type of pressure I'm under to write grants and plan events. You don't know my boss. And I have to tell you, it's true. I don't know your boss. But I did have a boss who didn't understand the importance of major gifts, and I've met plenty of them. He wanted me to focus all of my time on writing grants and planning events. And he was one of those people where everything was an emergency. Everything was on fire. He made it worse. And I'm sure you've worked for those people. If you're not working for them right now, you've worked for them in the past. So here's what I did. I wrote a simple 1-page plan. It demonstrated that if 3 of our top donors increased their giving by 10% or more, it would cover the cost. It would cover some of our smaller grants, right? So if I could convince or work with our biggest 3 donors to increase their giving by 10% or more, we could eliminate some of our smallest grants. Now, I also showed on this 1-page document that if any one of our top 5 donors, only one of them, any one of our top 5 doubled their gift, it would cover our smallest event. Now, once I showed him how and why, he was more willing to let me skip one grant and then another to focus on raising major gifts. So within a year, we had dropped our 2 small but very labor-intensive fundraising events, as well as a few smaller grants. So before you do anything drastic, I don't want you to cancel your events or stop writing grants. That is not what I'm saying. I want you to do this slowly and deliberately. But, you know, don't burn your bridges if you don't have to. In other words, try and raise some major gifts before canceling your events or skipping your next grant cycle. I want to encourage you to dedicate 30 minutes per day, 30 minutes per day, to learn the ins and outs of raising major gifts and start to set up your major gift program. And once you feel confident in that process and have set up the procedures, then you can transition to 30 minutes per day to raising major gifts. So don't quit your day job and put it all on the line, right? Make a plan and move thoughtfully and strategically towards your goal. Are you with me? Okay. So let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. If you followed what I showed you in secret number 1 and found that you do have donors in your database who can make major gifts, and then you did what I showed you in secret number 2 and found donors do want to meet with you and had a surefire way to connect with your donors, and you used secret number 3 to make the time to raise major gifts, do you think you could be successful? All right, so I think you could. So how many of you are still feeling a little overwhelmed with the idea of raising major gifts? Listen, it is impossible for me to tell you everything I want to tell you about how to raise major gifts in under 60 minutes. And I really want to get to a lot of your questions. But that's why I created a special program for those of you who are ready to move forward and really start raising major gifts. Really take major gifts seriously and start raising major gifts in a big way. So I want to answer as many questions as possible. So I want you to type them in now. But first, is it okay if I take 10 minutes to go over a special offer that I created to help you raise major gifts? Let me know in the comments. Who wants help mastering major gifts? So while you're letting me know if you want help mastering major gifts, but also typing in your questions, which I will try and answer all of them in just a few minutes, in the meantime, I want to tell you that if you stick with me till the end for questions, I'm going to give you a free worksheet on metrics, major gift metrics, how to evaluate your major gift program. And I will give that to you at the end. It's actually one of the free tools that I give the Mastering Major Gifts participants, but I'm going to give it to you at the end of this webinar just for being here. So that leads me to introduce you to Mastering Major Gifts, my 7-week online course. Now, I know you've heard me mention it once or twice already today, but I hope you'll let me tell you what you get along with it. So here's what you get. Here's what it is. 7 weeks of videos and worksheets. In week 1 or module 1, we'll cover the things that you need to do to get started to raise major gifts. In week 2, we'll go over how to engage and train your board. In week 3, we will focus on identifying the best donors for your organization. In week 4, we're going to talk about relationship building. In week 5, we're going to talk about all things solicitation and how you ask for a gift. In week 6, we're going to talk about what to do after you get the gift. And in week 7, we're going to finally wrap it up about growing your program and next steps. We're going to talk about planned giving and capital campaigns. So if you'll just indulge me, I just want to show you some people who have had a chance to already go through Mastering Major Gifts. This is Susan Sharp. She says, thanks to Mastering Major Gifts, I was able to develop a simple plan for raising major gifts. For the period June through August, we surpassed our fundraising goal of $150,000 by $100,000, raising just over $250,000, largely due to an increase in major gifts. Your training has made a huge difference in my career and, more importantly, in my community. And I am absolutely thrilled for Susan. That's why I'm doing that. Isn't that exciting? Also, Diana Wooley. She says, I took Mastering Major Gifts last fall when our organization couldn't afford it. And since I finished the course, I have found myself a donor acquisition machine. The process that Amy uses builds confidence. We are in the beginning stages of a nearly $12 million capital campaign. In a word, Mastering Major Gifts is life-changing. And probably my favorite story is Jeff Brodsky. Now, Jeff says we have had a fundraiser that we've been doing for the past 4 years. Prior to the one we just held, the most we ever raised at one of these events was $15,000. After taking your course and having a completely different mindset on how to speak with people, this event raised $203,000. So he went in less than a year from one event to the next, from $15,000 event that had been going on for 4 years to raising $203,000. Can you imagine if that happened to you? Just think about it. Imagine if that happened to you. I would love for you to be my next case study. So I want to go back and make sure that you realize who this is for. It's for people who really want to make a difference at their organization, at their nonprofit, and in their career. It's for fundraising professionals at small and large organizations, and it has worked for fundraisers in hospitals and colleges, as well as for staff at tiny theaters, as well as homeless shelters. And it's for nonprofit professionals with years of fundraising experience who want to be experts at raising major gifts, and for those who are new to fundraising to get started in the right direction. Now listen, the biggest excuse I hear not to take the class is not having enough money to invest in training like this. You might be thinking you can't get started because it's not in the budget. Well, here's why that's a mistake and will hold you back from raising major gifts. Listen, learning how to raise major gifts is an investment, not an expense. If you apply what you learned, and you have to apply what you learned, you should raise 10, 20, or even 100 times your investment. The safest bet there is always is betting on yourself. And not only that, I'm actually offering 100% money back guarantee. Try the training for 30 days, and if you do the work, we will be happy to refund your entire investment. Sound good? Okay, I'd also like you to meet Catherine Benjamin. Catherine says, I'm so thankful for Mastering Major Gifts. One of Amy's suggestions was directly responsible for our board members pledging $24,000 for the spring appeal. That alone paid for the course more than 10 times over. And it's at least double what our spring appeal usually raises. And so I have to put this into context. The board members never gave anywhere close to $24,000 before, and it helped double, more than double, their spring appeal. So this was really significant for them, and it was one small tip from the course that got her here. So it's just not in the budget is not a good excuse, because the course pays for itself. Let me tell you, another excuse I hear is, I don't have time, right? But the good news is this course is actually going to save you time in the long run. So in addition to the core curriculum, that's the 7 weeks of videos, you're going to get cheat sheets, templates, and checklists, and my ask amount calculator formula. So I'll tell you, when I was first figuring out how to raise major gifts, it took me years of trial and error, but I don't want you to have to go through that. I have created templates and formulas for myself, but I'm going to give them to you. Every single module, every single week has cheat sheets, templates, and checklists. So you are never going to reinvent the wheel. For years, I really had no idea how to determine an appropriate ask amount. So I created a major gift ask amount calculator formula for myself. I spent so much time agonizing over how much to ask for. And after years of research and experience, I've come up with a formula, and I'm going to give it to you as part of this package. Does that sound good? Now, another excuse that I hear is fear of failure, right? Either we can't do this at our organization, it won't work here, I don't know what to do next, or what if they say no? There's a lot of fear around failure of raising major gifts. What if you go out there and a donor says no or gets mad at you? All kinds of fear of failure is swirling out there. So for the course, we're also going to give you access to accountability groups, 5-person accountability groups if you want to be in one to help keep you accountable, and 4 live Q&A sessions and private Facebook group. So this means that you will have the opportunity to participate in an accountability group to help you stay on track, so and have your questions answered by your peers. And I will be available to personally answer your questions through the private Facebook group and in the Q&A sessions. So I will answer all of your questions. So we will not let you fail. There's no fear of failure. You can do it, and we're going to help you through it. But that's not all. We are so excited. So in addition to the 7 weeks of videos, including new material this year, I think I forgot to mention that before, you're going to get cheat sheets and templates and checklists, an ask amount calculator formula, the 5-person accountability groups, 4 live Q&A sessions, and a private Facebook group. We are also going to give you a free wealth screening of your top 200 donors. And you're going to be able to find out once and for all what assets your donors have and really find the hidden gold in your database. And also, we're going to give you implementation pathways for nonprofits and individuals. You are going to get to see examples of people just like you at organizations, just like yours, who have done this successfully. They're going to give you tips and pointers on exactly what worked for them and how to do this. And finally, we want all of our board members more engaged. So I'm going to give you training tools and exercises that you can use with your board members right away. Okay. I am so thrilled because CFRE found so much value in this course that they're going to give you 35 hours of CFRE credit, continuing ed credit. So if you're thinking of applying for the CFRE or need to renew, this is a surefire way to get the continuing CFRE credits that you need. Now, you're going to get 7 weeks of videos. That's the core curriculum, including new material this year, cheat sheets, templates, checklists, ask amount calculator, accountability groups, live Q&A sessions, and a private Facebook group. You're going to get wealth screening of your top 200 donors. You're going to get to see implementation pathways, board training tools and exercises, and 35 CFRE credits. So listen, if all Mastering Major Gifts did was show you how to raise major gifts without adding a single new donor to your list, would it be worth $19,000? And what if all it did was get donors to say yes to meeting with you? Would it be worth $19,000? What if all it did was show you how to find the time so you could raise 10 times more than you are right now? Then I think it would be worth $19,000. So if you could successfully raise major gifts, I want you to really think about what that would be worth to you, your organization, and your career. And you can probably see why people pay $19,000 for a similar result from me, because it's not a cost. It really is an investment in you and your organization. If you were to hire a professional consultant to do this for you, it would cost $25,000 or more at least. And you've already seen how it's worth $19,000, but because I really want you to raise major gifts, I really want you to raise major gifts and fulfill the mission of your organization, I'm going to give you a special offer with a significant discount. You can get started now with Mastering Major Gifts for only $1,997. In fact, we're running an early bird discount now for $1,697. All you have to do is go to masteringmajorgifts.com/order. Now, because you're learning to do this yourself, I'm giving you all the tools and resources. You only pay $19.97, or if you act today, $16.97. All you have to do, again, masteringmajorgifts.com/order. Now, I want to tell you, you've got two choices. You can do what you've always done and get the same results you've always gotten, or you can take a leap of faith. Now, remember, I am so confident in this program. I'm giving 100% money back guarantee. I know that Mastering Major Gifts will help you learn to raise major gifts, get off the never-ending treadmill of grant writing and event planning, become an in-demand fundraising professional, and overcome your fear of fundraising. I want you to try the training for 30 days, and if you do the work, we will refund your entire investment. Listen, you have nothing to lose. Even if it only does half of what I've claimed, it will pay for itself many times over. So 7 weeks of videos, that's the core curriculum. Cheat sheets, templates, checklists, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Ask amount calculator formula, so you don't have to agonize over how much to ask. Accountability groups to keep you on track. Live Q&A sessions and private Facebook groups where I will personally answer your questions and serve as your mentor. Wealth screening of your top 200 donors. Implementation pathways for nonprofits and individuals so you can model how other people have done it, board training tools and exercises, and 35 CFRE credit hours. And I am so confident in this course, and I want you to take it so badly that I'm going to give you 1 hour of private coaching with me. On here, I say for the first 10 buyers only. You know what? For anybody that buys in the next hour until 3 o'clock Eastern time, just about 1 hour from now, if you buy, I'm going to give you 1 hour of private coaching with me as well. So listen, you can get started now with Mastering Major Gifts for only $19.97. If you're listening to the recording live, you can get the early bird discount of $16.97. At masteringmajorgifts.com/order. And now I am going to answer as many questions as we possibly can. So Wooley, do we have questions that people have asked?
Yeah, there was like lots of questions coming in during the entire presentation. And I guess we'll start first in the section where you talked about focus on the donor. Emily Lewis asked, so for some donor meetings, would you recommend not even having an agenda and just let the donor talk? Or is that too dangerous if you're going into it without any agenda at all?
Oh, yes. You always want to be prepared for meetings. You always want to have an agenda. Now, if the donor does take the conversation somewhere else, I want you to be flexible enough and resilient enough, but you want to have a goal for what you want to accomplish. And so you definitely want to go in with an agenda and specific open-ended questions that you want to ask your donor that will help guide and steer the conversation. And when I say open-ended questions, I don't mean, do you like our organization? That's yes or no. I mean open-ended, like, what do you like most about our organization? And so, yes, you guide the conversation.
All right, and then the next question in that same section from the Zipper guy was, predefine a specific ROI for your donor. I think it was something where you were talking about, you know, what are you looking at for your donors and what would tell you that this is the right ROI that you would get from a donor?
Yeah, so I guess I'm not totally sure I understand the question, but does it have to do with ask amount and how much read it to me one more time, what it says?
Predefine a specific ROI for your donor.
Yeah, so right, you want to try and figure out what's the best return on investment. And a lot of times we're talking about this in terms of how much time to spend with a donor or to travel to a donor, whether or not you're going to be traveling to a donor to ask them and making sure that you're getting the most. I think that, you know, it's hard to pinpoint an amount, a specific amount. I guess I guess I'm not really sure that I understand the question. I don't think let's move on. Email me that question, whoever asked it, and I
Yep.
will respond to you. I'm sorry.
Cool. No problem. So in the next section, when you were talking about getting the donor meeting, and you said you have to push back when it say, I don't have time or something. And so Jamie Kammer Woods asked, can you provide examples of how to push back to some of those responses? And then,
Yes.
yeah, Meg asked the same question, how to push back.
Okay, definitely. All right, so let's use an example. A frequent thing that we hear when we call donors, I don't have time to meet. And so you can say something, the pushback would be, I completely understand we're all super busy. I would be happy to meet at your convenience, at your home or office for a short period of time, like 20 minutes. So you might want to say, I understand that we're all busy and time is tight for everyone. We'll keep the meeting short. How about 20 minutes or less? And I'd be happy to meet you at your home or office at your convenience. So that would be one example of a pushback for I don't have time. If they say something like, why me? I'm not a big donor, or I'm not going to be a big donor. The pushback is, listen, we are meeting with all of our donors. As a donor, you're very important to us. It's okay with us if you're not going to make a big gift now or maybe even in the future. We'd still love your opinion, right? We'd love to hear from you. And so that's the pushback.
Got it. And then Tom Carlson had sort of like an additional question in that context. If a donor says they aren't interested, why pursue them?
Yeah. So, I mean, sometimes people are just using that as an excuse because they don't want to meet with you, or they're afraid of the unknown too. What could you possibly be coming to meet with them? Not everybody is experienced at these fundraising meetings. And so I think you want to pry a little bit in terms of what do they mean they're not that interested. So listen, if you've been a donor for a couple of years, or you've been a supporter or a volunteer, I mean, we are starting with people who have already donated to our cause. And so we know that we hope they're at least a little bit interested. So listen, as a past donor, we'd love to get to know you a little bit and find out why you did decide to give in the first place or over the last couple of years. I think just to get past the phone call, lots of people will say, I'm not that interested. If they say, listen, I gave in honor of somebody, it's not really normally an organization I would support, then you can thank them and say, I appreciate your time, and move on to the next person. You don't want to be meeting with people who really aren't interested, but I would try and get to the bottom of if that's really an excuse.
All right, great. And the Zipper guy just chimed in. The ROI question was more of a statement. We need to hone in on what a perceived ROI is for the donor. That way they can actually want to donate by the end of the interaction.
Oh, okay. Yes. Thank you. All right, great. What's the next question?
All right, so next question, Monique Johnson asked, in that context, I've read another suggestion to ask this question at a meeting. And the question was, when was the last time you experienced joy in giving a gift? And her question is, have you ever used this question, and was it successful?
Oh, definitely. I love asking that question actually of board members about joy in giving a gift, because giving should be joyful, and we definitely want to remind people of that. If my good friend Kent Stroman reminds me that we don't want donors going away from an ask meeting and telling their friends, oh, they strong-armed me into a gift, it was an awful experience. No, we want our donors going to their next cocktail party or to work and saying, oh my God, I made the most amazing gift. This is the organization I'm involved with. We want them to be our ambassadors. We want giving to be joyful and happy. So definitely bringing joy back into fundraising, key.
Cool. So next question, Elena Hoffenberg asked, what do you do when your donors may be out of town and unable to meet in person?
Yeah, great question. I actually have a recent blog post about that, so you can quickly search my blog for out-of-town donors, but let me give you the highlights. And that is, one is keep in touch as you would your college roommate who lives out of town, or your aunt or your cousin or a good friend. So you stay in touch periodically, you email, you text, you ask them to video chat, you ask them to let you know when they're going to be in your area so you can meet with them. And honestly, once in a while, you go visit them. My rule of thumb, so sort of getting back to ROI, which is what I was hinting at a little bit, or maybe getting at, was if you're asking for $10,000 or more, then it is worth a plane ticket and a hotel overnight stay to go visit somebody. Because, you know, I don't want to get into sort of overhead and fundraising costs, because I don't want to, but you know, if you're spending 10%, $1,000 to go out and visit someone who's probably going to give you $10,000 more, that probably is a good use of your resources and a good return on your investment. And so I think going to visit them, having them let you know when they come to town would be great, and just keeping in touch all the modern resources that we can do. One of the things that I said in my blog post, though, if you are going to have donors video chat with you, which I hope you will, they all know how to do it because they video chat with their kids and grandkids, make sure to use whatever tools and resources they're used to. So if they Skype or FaceTime or Google Chat, whatever they do, that's what you should do. Don't make them learn a new tool or download a new system or be confused. You just get an account with whatever they're used to doing, and then hopefully you'll be able to meet with them.
Great. So the next question from Freedom House was, how do we convince our boards that we need a mentor?
Oh, great question. Well, you know, I think that probably the best way is to show maybe some of the training that you've already done, the books that you've read, the blog posts that you read, the conferences that you've been to. It's only gotten you so far. And a mentor will really take you across the finish line and give you the ins and outs and answer your questions personally, so that you have success. A mentor wants to see you succeed and will help get you that extra way that you need to go. Also, the good news is that this course you can sign up and anybody at your office can take it along with you. So if your board members want to watch along, if your executive director wants to watch along with you, or your development assistant or associate, anybody at your site, at your location can take advantage. So hopefully that will help convince them.
All right, next question from Elaine Lawrence. How do I connect with a former major donor who has been ignored by the organization for years? And then other folks chimed in, how do you revive lapsed or dormant donors?
Yeah, great question. So sometimes you can and sometimes you can't, but you've always got to try, right? And so I would get on the phone with them and say, listen, I've noticed that I'm new here, or even I've been here for a few years, and we're really trying to grow our programs and services, and therefore get in touch, reconnect with our donors. And I've noticed that you've been neglected and ignored, unfortunately, for years, or we haven't heard from you from years and we haven't reached out. And I'm here to try and change that. And so I hope that you will connect with me. Let me know why you were committed to our organization in the past, and what made you stop giving or connecting or volunteering or whatever, and what would have to happen for you to reconnect and re-engage. And so, you know, sometimes I like to call it a listening tour. Call all those lapsed donors and say, hey, listen, I know you haven't been a donor for a while. Shame on us for losing touch with you. And I'm going on a listening tour of current and past donors, and I hope that you might give me 20 minutes. Again, I'll come to your home or office. I'd love to hear why you were involved either a few years ago or lots of years ago, and what might make you re-engage.
Excellent, excellent. I think that's next question. Christy Orant asked, do you recommend asking for the gift at the first meeting or having several meetings before the ask?
Yeah, so we like to use the analogy of asking for a marriage proposal on a first date, right? So This process is a lot like dating. If you have somebody, you go out on a first date, you ask them to marry you, most people will run for the hills, right? The same thing with major gifts. If you think you're going to get the largest gift you can get out of a person at a first meeting, it's simply not true. They might give you what we call in the business go away money. They might give you a few hundred or maybe a few thousand. But if you ask for money on a first meeting, it's going to be a teeny tiny fraction of what they could give you if you developed a relationship with them.
All right. Last question that came in, and if you have any other questions, please put them in the live chat. Antonio Bailey asked, how do you create an audience?
Yeah, so start with your board members and your staff members and the people that they know. You can also start with your clients or the people you serve and who they know. So you do need to start building your audience, and I'm assuming that you mean potential donors. And so first of all, going to your board members, building your board. If you have a small board, trying to grow your board, talking to your board and staff members about whom they know that might be interested. And then growing it organically, people that call into your organization, volunteer with your organization, that's how you grow it. And so I noticed, I have to say that I stopped on slide. I have 2 more slides. I'm assuming they're just, oh my gosh, I never gave the reward. That's horrible. I completely forgot. So listen, those of you that stuck around till the end, here's your free metrics worksheet. I just noticed I had more slides. Masteringmajorgifts.com/reward. That is where you can get your free metrics worksheet. So masteringmajorgifts.com/reward. I'm sorry about that. And now back to the slide. So, all right, good. Any other questions?
There was one more that came in from Good Life Global. How do you cultivate major gifts when you are brand new to the organization's development team?
Yeah, so, you know, Major Gifts is all about relationships and building relationships with people. And so you're going to need, you can use to the advantage that you're new to the organization to go on your listening tour and make a list of your prospective donors and call them and meet with them so that you can get to know them. Initially, it's not about asking for a gift, but so that they're giving you feedback about how the organization is with donors, what you need to know, what you need to do, why they've given in the past and why they would give in the future so that you can get to know them. So I think it's great when you're new. I mean, it's better when you're there a long time and you have relationships, but when you're new, you can say, listen, I'm new. I'm calling our supporters and I hope you'll give me a few minutes to get to know you so that I can learn more about you and the organization and that I can do my job better.
All right. Any more questions from the audience? Otherwise, all right.
Great. Thank you. Listen, just a reminder, if you do register in the next hour, I will add in a private coaching 1-hour call with me. So I do hope that you go to masteringmajorgifts.com/order and get started now. Class starts in a few days and I can't wait to see you. Thanks, everybody.
All right.